Good morning, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining Club Carnivore. I'm airing from uh, near Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I've got the carnivore historian, George Goodenough, here to share. Today we're going to be talking about who are we going to be talking about today, dear George?
Well, we're going to be talking about today is the history of allopathic medicine and the role that J.D. Rockefeller, one of the richest Americans of all time, played in the development of allopathic medicine. Now, allopathic medicine is a term that we often hear from our doctors saying that the current system is allopathic, but I never really understood what it meant. So I thought I'd do a deep dive into it, and I found a good resource. Just a quick comment on the good day, good afternoon. It is in fact 7 o'clock in the evening over here now, and it's completely dark because our clocks went back an hour last night to daylight saving time. We went from British summertime back to Greenwich Mean Time, and apparently we are a week ahead of the North American daylight saving time. So it's a bit confusing for me for the next week. But apparently you guys go back an hour next week, so it's back to normal for me after that. Go
What
on.
do you think about this changing the time thing?
Yeah, it's I mean, the idea is that I think it was brought up. I can't remember who brought it up, but somebody quite famous back in the day. It's basically trying to get more work out of people because the working day ends at 5 o'clock maybe. So if we stayed on British summertime, then the work. Sorry, no, it's the other way around. If we set on British summertime, then it wouldn't get light in the morning until 9 o'clock in January. So they want people to be able to be up and about. So I think the latest sunrise we have here in the UK is 8:15 in the morning. But if we didn't have that daylight saving time, then it would be 9:15, and that would probably increase the risks of driving at that time. So it kind of works. It's just so confusing, isn't it? Really, I wish they could settle on one and decide that was the best one. But hey, it is what it is. And
Is there any place in where you live in your country where there isn't any change?
no, it's all right across Europe. We have the 1 hour daylight saving time policy in place. Apparently, Steph's in Cyprus. Stephanie Taylor is in Cyprus, and she has today again had the 1 hour daylight saving time kick in. I spoke to John Laspina and Diane Ladd on Carnival Sunday School, and apparently across America it goes back next week. So for 1 week, I am 4 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time, but next week I return to being 5 hours ahead, which is the one which I'm used to now. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think it's Winnipeg or Saskatchewan here that they don't have their time change. It's one of the two, I can't remember. But
Yeah, yeah,
so
that must be confusing as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like why do we get left out?
yeah, it's fair enough.
Mm. So yeah, so you bring up Stephanie Taylor. We're gonna be having a new series coming out. So it's the last series for now of the carnivore history and how we came to be now. So I think it's been very, very wonderful that you've been providing this information to us. It's important. And
Yeah.
you're also going to be writing a book. Do you have regarding the stuff that we've been talking about the last 4 or 5 series? When's that book gonna be? What's the
It
project?
It will be written next year. I've got 3 books lined up. One of my story about my involvement in the Middle East, because I've been involved in 1 war and 2 revolutions, as well as a bit of tourism over there and a bit of work over there as well. So that's 1 book. The other book will be the history since 1801 of the people and the carnival, the history of low carb and meat eating only. And the 3rd book I've got is my own story of how I got ill and how I stopped being ill, and also of how I built a community or integrated myself into a community which is now worldwide, and how I basically integrated myself into the USA community and the Canadian and the Australian community to a large extent as well, and a few outliers from New Zealand and Belgium and places like that, and France. Now we've got a French guy on the latest innovation in the Kilts Health course, and we have a lady from the Netherlands as well. So yeah, our community is massively worldwide. It stretches for me from eastern Australia in Queensland, right down into the corner of Southern California, LA, and Angela Lero down there, and my friend Dawn Bahuda in Southern California as well, and everywhere in between, basically. So it's the story of now I'm going to research the history of the carnivore community. So yeah, I've got 3 books lined up, as well as the restaurant project as well, the how to dine out on carnivore, which is generating a bit of interest now. So yeah, so next year will be my book writing year. Hopefully the following year we might see it published, which I'm looking forward to.
So now you bring up a good point, the restaurant project, which I think is so cool. So cool. How can we help you? How can anybody listening to help? Can you describe and how can they help?
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm doing it, I know you're not on Facebook yourself, Nikki, but I am doing it on Facebook as a magazine article every time I'm sort of practicing it. Now, what you could do personally is you could go and visit your local restaurant and do a YouTube on it, for example, and give a feedback on YouTube. Anybody out there who is on Facebook, you can use Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It's basically just do a restaurant review. For example, there is the Michelin guide out there for normal people, and there was Egon Rone was a guy who did the same sort of thing. So they're the inspiration behind the carnivore guide to dining out worldwide, basically. So anybody who ever dines out, whether it and it just give a feedback and say were they carnivore aware, were they carnivore friendly, did they use seed oils, was it char grilled, what was the service like, just basically a review through the eyes of a carnivore versus through the eyes of a normal person, if you know what I mean, because we're not normal, are we? Let's face it.
Who wants to be normal?
Yeah, exactly. Who wants to be normal? I spent an entire life not being normal, so it's
yes, good. Those are my favorite people.
Exactly. I've always been a revolutionary, and that's how I ended up accidentally getting involved in 2 revolutions in the Middle East. But I very much enjoyed the lifestyle. I lost a job through it once. Lost a couple of jobs actually along the way. But I've got to the magic. I've got to the magic age of 60 without actually losing the roof over my head. So hopefully it will stay that way, and I can carry on with the revolutionary work. My latest revolution is the food revolution, which is the carnivore community. So here I am.
And it's such an important topic and so fascinating, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you're also doing. Can you tell everybody how we can help with the meetup and when it is and how can we prepare it and where do we contact you for the meetup, the British meetup?
Okay, the Great British Meetup will be happening over the course of June the 12th and June the 13th next year. June the 13th is the meetup. However, the venue is a farm near Glastonbury, and it has on June the 12th, the Friday, June the 12th, it will have an open meeting for the public, which we can attend, which worked very well this year because Ashley, the caterer, did a hog roast for the public. And of course, he was providing the applesauce and the bread rolls and everything else that goes with a normal hog roast. But he was aware that about 30 of us would be turning up for it. So he provided a carnivore-only alternative, which went down very, very well. He'll hopefully be doing the same next year on the evening before the meetup. But on the meetup itself, obviously, he'll be switching to pure carnivore. And, so that's how we're going to play it. It's likely to be the carnivore burger, which he has worked on. It was the idea of Stephen Thomas, Coach Stephen Thomas, BSc Honours, quite famous in our space. And what he's doing is he's doing ground beef only or minced beef only. And he's adding in extra fat to the mix and salt, but leaving out any other form of seasoning. 7-ounce burger. It's very good. He did this year, he didn't add in the extra fat, and it was a little bit dry because it was quality lean ground beef, but he'll be adding the extra fat in next year to give it a bit more juiciness. So 7-ounce burgers, and he'll be doing the hog roast as well. So it's going to be a hog roast and 7-ounce burgers. You basically, for your money, you're going to have a choice between either all burger or hog roast or half and half. So that's how we're going to play it next year. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's right in the middle of summer. There is camping on site,
Okay,
toilets on
that's
site,
the
and
question.
spot on. So yeah, anybody just reach out to me via the usual channels, me on Facebook, me on YouTube. The Primal Lifestyle, Carl Day, he's the one of my joint conspirators. Stephanie as well, Stephanie Taylor, who we mentioned on Happy Sexy Health. She's part of the committee, so she'll be able to answer any questions as well. So there's several ways of reaching out to us. So look forward to seeing you all there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, and Dr. Kills is coming as well. He's actually promised me that he's coming. So yeah, you can actually reach out to through Alia as well. If you can't find us for any reason, you can reach out through to Dr. Kiltz, and she'll Alia will redirect everybody to me, and so that's no problems there at all.
Excellent. When are you coming to Canada?
That's a very good question because, as you probably know, Wyoming has stolen me as far as my trips across the pond are concerned. Dr. Kiltz sent me to Wyoming for the beef roundup this year, which didn't happen, but I still went. But I'm part of the planning process for next year's beef roundup at the end of August in Wyoming. So yeah, I'm afraid that the Canada trip will have to be put on hold because I can only afford one trip a year across the pond for obvious reasons, and that is taken up with Wyoming at the moment. But who knows? It's always a possibility, isn't it? You know, maybe one day I'll win the lottery and do the grand tour from Southern
Wow.
California, from Southern California to Alaska with Canada in between. It's possible. You never know.
I see people lining up to be coached by you.
I certainly hope so. Yeah, I hope to actually launch.
Over.
Yeah, just to explain that I am through with the help of my business-minded friend who is also going down a coaching route. She's not going carnivore coaching; she's going menopause coaching. Ex-army colleague of mine. She is going to be my business advisor because she is very good at business. She's going to help me set up the limited company. This week, I will be getting my certificate printed by a local printer, and I'll be getting some coaching business cards sorted out. And on November the 4th, on Tuesday, November the 4th, I will be going to a veterans health conference with fellow health professionals. So I should be getting my name out there on that day. I hope to start coaching in January. That's the plan once we finish the second course that we are all doing. Yeah, so that's my target to be actually on the market by January. And we'll see how it goes from there. I've got books to write. At the end of the day, if I need to make money in a hurry, I can always go back temporarily into construction, which I don't want to do. But I've got that as a fallback because I've got quite a lot of qualifications in that as well. So we'll see how it goes.
I see you helping many people. You already are. So go
Yeah,
on.
well, I've got one or two that I'm helping at the moment, but they're friends of mine. But the idea is if I help friends and they will go and spread the word, and then other people will come and consult me, and I will start charging when the time is right. So there we go. Right. Anyway, so we had a good chat. Shall we get into the lecture?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. So
Yeah. Okay. So really, what we're looking at tonight is where the term allopathic medicine came from. We hear it quite a lot in our community, but I don't think a lot of people actually have really thought about what does it mean. What is the definition of allopathic medicine? It ties in with J.D. Rockefeller, as we will see later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it lecture style. I'm going to read from my notes, so it's a bit dry, a bit sterile, but I've got no other way of doing it tonight. So allopathic medicine, what is it? In allopathic medicine, healthcare professionals use a range of treatments to treat infection, illness, and disease. Other names for allopathic medicine include modern medicine, mainstream medicine, Western medicine, orthodox medicine, biomedicine, and allopathy. In allopathic health systems, medical doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and other healthcare professionals have licenses to treat symptoms and diseases. Treatment is done with medication, surgery, radiation, and other therapies and procedures, which we shall find out more in the future. So, as you can see, there is no mention of natural remedies there, no mention of diet, no mention of lifestyle at all. So, allopathic medicine concentrates very much on treating the symptoms of disease. Right. Other types of medicines, other types of approaches to medicine are referred to as complementary and alternative medicine, for short, CAM. Alternative medicine uses only non-mainstream approaches. when non-mainstream approaches are used instead of conventional medicine. This is called alternative medicine. So there is no combination of the two. However, sorry, I've got a good example of this. So I use alternative medicine myself in order to cure myself of metabolic syndrome, which is type 2 diabetes, a waistline which is out of proportion to my height, morbid obesity, and very high triglycerides, and also high blood pressure and hypertension. I managed to get rid of 4 of those 5 indicators of metabolic syndrome. My blood pressure is still too high according to the mainstream medicine. That's probably on account of the fact that I've lived a very high stress lifestyle and still have a fairly high stress lifestyle. However, Coach Stephen Thomas, who is the expert phlebotomist, says that in the old way of measuring the hypertension before they were trying to sell drugs, I'm still within the normal range. So effectively, I am completely out of metabolic syndrome. But that was me using alternative medicine, because I threw away the prescriptions for the drugs. I never took the drugs. Instead, I replaced it with a therapeutic carbohydrate restriction regime. In other words, low carb, high fat. And I lost 120 pounds, lost 10 inches off my waist, reduced my triglycerides to a very low level. And what was the other one? Yeah, more type 2 diabetes gone. My HbA1c is now perfect. So yeah.
What was your A1C before?
My A1C before, right, let me think of this, was 50 in British terms. We use a different measurement. It was 6.7 in the USA terms. I'm not sure whether you guys actually in Canada use the same as us. No. But I managed to reduce it to 32 when I was declared non-diabetic, and that is 5.1 percentage. And I went through 36 in the meantime, which is 5.4. Yeah, so I dropped from 6.7, which is just into the diabetic range, down to 5.1, which is well clear of even pre-diabetes. So that was, and I did that without any form of allopathic medicine. So that was me using alternative treatment.
Well, within a short time, it was like a couple of years, right? Like
no, I was actually out of diabetes and even pre-diabetes within 5 months of going low carb, high fat. It took me 2.5 years. Yeah, 2.5 years to get down to 5.1%. But I was well and truly out of diabetes, out of pre-diabetes after 5 months of going low carb, high fat. The result was spectacular and instantaneous, basically. By that time, after 5 months, I'd already lost 56 pounds of the 120 I've eventually lost. So I was deflating like a balloon, and my body was very thankful for not taking the drugs and for eating properly, the proper human diet. Therapeutic carbohydrate restriction. So there we go. That was my story. Okay, so that's the alternative medicine, which is what I use, because I didn't combine allopathic medicine with lifestyle. I just did the lifestyle change. However, integrative medicine is another name for it, and that is it uses all approaches, both conventional, as in allopathic, and non-mainstream. The focus is on treating the whole person rather than only treating a specific symptom or condition. A non-mainstream treatment is called complementary when used alongside conventional medicine. Now, under this roof, we have a very good example of that in my wife, Lainey, who is a cancer sufferer, quite a serious cancer, quite a dangerous cancer. But she has quite sensibly accepted all of the conventional medicine, which is chemotherapy, then mastectomy, then radiotherapy, and now she's in a long-term randomized controlled trial with a very promising new drug called elacestrant, specific to her type of cancer, which comes out of New York. So God bless America. But this is a big but. She is using integrative medicine on account of the fact she's a fairly strict carnivore now. So she is combining both mainstream medicine, allopathic medicine, with alternative medicine. So it's called integrative. So she's focusing on the mainstream medicine, but she's using carnivore as a tool or weapon in her toolbox. So therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, because she understands that cancer can only feed on glucose and glutamine. So by going carnivore, she's cutting off the glucose source that the cancer can use to build. And the result is that she has got massive energy, even though she's on very serious medication. She's got normal energy levels, I would say. She's like a whirlwind, domestic whirlwind around the house, to say the very least. And on off the back of this, and also because of the example of, again, we're going to mention Stephanie, because Stephanie and Lainey are sisters in the cancer struggle. Stephanie inspired Lainey to go full carnivore, and she is finding the same thing. She has a very dangerous cancer, which could be life threatening, but she has gone carnivore and is living her life to the full, with all the energy. And Professor Thomas Seyfried, I actually was in on a conversation that Stephanie had with Professor Thomas Seyfried. He has something called the glucose ketone index, and apparently if you can keep your glucose ketone index down to below 2, then you are killing tumor cells. Now Stephanie keeps hers, she measures hers, Lainey doesn't measure hers, but her average GKI is 1.6. So Thomas Seyfried reckons that she is killing tumor cells by keeping to within that GKI, and he is the expert. And basically between the three of us, well, I came up with it, but when we were talking about it, I came up with a little saying that chemotherapy fights cancer, but carnivore fights chemotherapy in as much as it fights the side effects of chemotherapy. Because most people on chemotherapy are fatigued, brain fogged, no energy, a lot of side effects. But both Stephanie and Lainey are living proof that carnivore, that you can be on chemotherapy but still have a normal energy level lifestyle. I've got a cat in the background. He's trying to get out. I might have to disappear in a second. Depends on whether he settles down or not. But Angus, come on. No, he's looking at me, but I'll give him a chance to settle down back down again. Yeah. So basically, chemo fights cancer, carnivore fights chemo, and basically it's allowed both Stephanie and Lainey to live normal lives within the constraints of the cancer and the treatment thereof. So that's the difference between alternative medicine, which I used, alternative therapy, which I used, and the integrative approach, which both Stephanie and Lainey are using to fight cancer. So a combination of mainstream medicine and lifestyle. So hopefully that's clarified. So that's 1/4 of the lecture over. So we're not doing too badly. Right. So allopathic medicine treatment. Allopathic medicine doctors and other healthcare professionals use a range of treatments to treat infection, illness, and disease. These include prescription drugs like antibiotics, penicillin, amoxicillin, vancomycin, and augmentin, 2 of which are those I've heard, the other 2 I haven't. Also blood pressure medications, diuretics, beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, and ACE inhibitors. Again, I'm not a doctor, I don't really fully understand all of those, but they are on the paper. One which I know a little bit more about was diabetes drugs, such as metformin, sitagliptin, DPP-4 inhibitors, and thiazolidine which I can barely pronounce. I've never heard of it. But certainly when I was issued with my own type 2 diabetes drugs, I was issued with a prescription for metformin, which I threw away into the bin and went and cured myself without it. And also migraine medications, gotamines, triptans, anti-nausea drugs. Now, I used to suffer very badly from migraines when I was malnourished, and I was issued with a drug called, a very powerful triptan, I think it was, called Somatropan. And it did work, but I don't have to take it anymore because I don't get the migraines anymore. At least if I get a headache, it's at the ibuprofen level. Sometimes because I'm so fatigued a lot of the time now, not fatigued, but I'm tired because of the hours that I keep. I occasionally have to resort to ibuprofen, but it goes away very, very quickly. And also another one which comes under this, the treatments is chemotherapy. That is regarded as an allopathic treatment. Right, and also some types of prescription drugs replace hormones when the body can't make enough or any of a certain type of hormone. and this is where you are going to come in, Nikki, because insulin, in the case of type 1 diabetes, in my opinion, wrongly given to type 2 diabetics in the past, because you're actually adding to the problem rather than solving the problem in type 2 diabetes.
But people don't understand that, and this is
No,
the
exactly, yeah.
You're going to come
Which
in
is why I, in my own personal opinion, I'm not a doctor, but I don't think type 2 diabetes should have the name diabetes attached to it.
I keep thinking about that, and I think it's just so clever. Like, yes, that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. It's an interactive discussion. So yeah, and as the type 1 diabetic is very close to your heart. But I honestly believe that it would be far better to call type 2 diabetes its real name, which is hyperinsulinemia or hyperglycemia, as in to raise insulin, raise blood sugar. It's not the same as type 1 diabetes, which is not necessarily curable through carnivore, but it's manageable through carnivore. But it is it's a very different animal to type 2 diabetes. There's no question about that.
You know who I met? I meet the most interesting people every day at the gym. And I'm surrounded by type 2 diabetics at the gym. So every morning I go for a swim, sauna, hot tub, and I'm smooching with my buddies at the gym. And I met a lady the other day, and I said, I can't help but ask you. I said, I see this, right? So, I pointed to her CGM.
CGM, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I said, are you type 1 or type 2? She said, I'm type 2. She said, I used to be type 1. But she switched. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I said, okay, can we go for coffee? I said, I would love to interview you. I do a YouTube channel, and I would love to interview you and unpack this. Would you be interested in, let's go, at least go for coffee. She said, yeah, let's go for coffee. So I'm going to bring her on one of the stages here.
Yeah, good news. Yeah, just thinking that we've thrown in the term CGM there for anybody who's actually viewing this somewhere down the line. That is a continuous glucose monitor. CGM is a continuous glucose monitor, which is a quite useful tool in the battle against diabetes. I've never used it myself because I'm not really a gadget person, but I can imagine it's very useful for people who want to know what their blood sugar is at any time. As I said, Stephanie measures her glucose ketone index, so she measures both her blood sugar and her ketone levels as well. So that's quite a technical approach. This household, we just trust the process of carnivore. Right, where were we? Okay, so so we talked about the diabetes, insulin, also the thyroid hormones in hypothyroidism. That is another allopathic treatment, and also estrogen as well, which I think is probably HRT, hormone replacement therapy. That actually kind of fell suspect to Lainey's breast cancer because she is an estrogen positive type of breast cancer, and she had to come off HRT immediately, as in estrogen replacement, immediately on getting diagnosed. HRT was one of those nice drugs which take away some of the effects of menopause, some of the negative effects, but of course it has side effects. Such as like thalidomide did. Apparently, thalidomide was very good at removing morning sickness from expectant mothers. It's supposed to be a godsend, and of course, it ended up with lots of children who had whose arms never developed. So I actually went to school with a thalidomide victim, so I've got personal experience of it. So again, estrogen HRT takes away the bad effects of menopause, but it is linked to estrogen-related cancers. So
she was on HRT before she got diagnosed.
Yeah, absolutely. She was on HRT for a long time because she had a very difficult menopause, and HRT was a blessing because it took away the effects of the menopause. And interestingly enough, since she's not on HRT anymore and since she's on carnivore, she has had one or two symptoms of menopause come back, the hot flushes, and even bleeding at the age of in her late 50s. So yeah, it's just interesting. But some of these drugs, these wonder drugs that make life easier, somewhere down the road they come back and they bite you on the arse, as we say in England, or kick you out of the bus, as you might say over in your part of the world. Well,
I'm gonna say that now on.
yeah, but to bite you on the arse is what we say. So there we go. Right, yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next thing, allopathic medicine professionals may also recommend over-the-counter OTC medications. We've already touched on one tonight, like pain relievers such as acetaminophen, aspirin, and ibuprofen, and also paracetamol. We can probably chuck in there as well. Advil, I think that's another one you have over in the States. I've already mentioned ibuprofen. I still do use it occasionally for the headaches when I'm tired. Cut of ibuprofen, go back to bed for an hour, wake up, and the headache's gone. So that's quite a good way of doing it. I do nap nowadays because I'm living out of sync with the rest of the UK because I've tied myself into American time. I do get tired, and I do have to have the occasional 1 hour, 1.5 hours sleep during the day.
Right, because you're always going on people's podcasts and stuff. So
exactly, up to 3 o'clock in the morning over here. So yeah, my circadian rhythms are shot to bits basically. But hey, it's worth it for the work that I'm doing. So I appreciate it. Yeah, and other over the counters include muscle relaxants, cough suppressants, your typical like Benylin, I think we have in this country. So it's like a cough syrup. Sore throat medications, otherwise known as pastilles or lozenges over here. Can't remember the brand names now. It's been so long since I've had to take any. And of course, the topical antibiotic ointments, which is quite good for treating cuts and stings and skin infections, that sort of thing. And the other common allopathic medicine treatments also include surgery and surgical procedures. So they are regarded as an allopathic treatment. And of course, the radiation treatment, which you get for after surgery in cancer. So basically, all the prescription drugs, over-the-counter medicines, surgery, and radiation, they are all regarded as being the allopathic or mainstream result. One thing you will see there, we haven't actually touched on anything to do with natural remedies or diet. We will come to that.
Okay.
That will appear under the next section, which is preventive care in allopathic medicine. Modern or mainstream medicine works to treat symptoms and illness, but it also helps to prevent illness and disease. Does it? Allopathic doctors can specialize in preventative medicine. This branch of mainstream medicine is overseen by the American College of Preventive Medicine. Prophylactic care is treatment to prevent an illness from happening. It's used in a variety of mainstream medical fields. So interesting enough, that word prophylactic, which we often associate with prevention of pregnancy, a certain device, that actually just means prevention, basically. So that's where prophylactic comes from. So preventive care in allopathic medicine includes vaccinations to prevent serious life-threatening illnesses in infants, children, and adults. For example, smallpox vaccinations, the various mumps, MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella, the flu jab every year, the famous vaccination from a few years ago, and the one which I had, which was probably very few people actually get, and that was the anthrax injection I had during the first Gulf War, which crippled me for about 24 hours. And when I became seriously metabolically ill, I thought it was my Gulf War service had something to do with it, because there is this thing called Gulf War syndrome, because we had a lot of injections during that time, including the anthrax. But as it turned out, I was barking up the wrong tree. It was, in fact, metabolic syndrome, not Gulf War syndrome. So there we go. What else have we got? We got the vaccinations, prophylactic antibiotics to prevent infection after surgery, a wound, or a very deep cut. So precautionary antibiotics, really. So preemptive strike against the possibility of infection, such as Staphylococcus or Streptococcus getting in. Because when I was in boot camp in the army, I had a very serious infection called cellulitis, which is Streptococcus, I believe, or it might be Staph, actually, I can't remember. But it's one of those bacterial infections. And basically, if you do get a wound, then you can take antibiotics to stop the staph or the strep from getting hold. Right, dietary. Here we go. This is an interesting one. Apparently, under preventive care, the mainstream medical industry, the allopathic industry, teaches dietary changes and exercise to help prevent serious complications like heart disease and stroke. Now, yes, they do. However, I think we all know, as our doctor friends tell us, the ones who went through medical school, they get about 4 hours of lectures on the dietary approach. and the dietary approach is focused on being plant-based and low fat, and red meat. So they are, in my opinion, my untrained opinion, but it is my strong opinion, that they are completely barking up the wrong tree, and that the dietary advice that the allopathic industry is giving to us is responsible, in my opinion, for a lot of the chronic diseases, the Western diseases, the modern day diseases. If they were to give the correct dietary advice, which is go and eat some fatty meat, 80-20% fat to protein, the chances are that these chronic diseases would be prevented. But then who would pay for the medicines? Who would pay for the pharmaceuticals? Who would line the pockets of these people who are in $1 trillion industry? So they're never going to actually give that advice, because a patient cured is a customer lost. So think about that. Right, okay, so and the other one is education programs to prevent the development of health issues such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. Great. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't eat red meat. Eggs contain salmonella. Oh, Jesus. Cholesterol is the source of heart disease. So basically, yeah, great. And preaching against smoking and drinking, totally agree with that. But to be preaching against cholesterol, saturated fat, and to be educating people to eat low fat, low fat, high carb, it's causing the diseases, isn't it? What's the word? The evidence is there. The evidence which runs alongside as these diseases go up, and we lower our intake of saturated fat, thanks to did I say idiots? I meant the experts. Thanks to them, basically PCOS, endometriosis, cardiovascular disease, cancer, strokes, they're all out of control, and diabetes as well, of course. They're all out of control, and the more that they become out of control, the more they try and double down on their lies, on their education, because they've been taught a lie, and the more the diseases go up, and the lower is in the consumption of saturated fat. Draw your own conclusions. I'm not a doctor. Okay. Right, so we've covered allopathic medicine. Now, that is a definition of allopathic medicine. It's all about treating symptoms with drugs and with surgery and with chemicals such as chemotherapy and radiation. So when did allopathic medicine become the norm? Has it always been the norm? Well, of course it hasn't, because we haven't had these over-the-counter pharmaceuticals or prescription pharmaceuticals since probably the beginning of the last century, the 20th century. Now, interestingly enough, I've discussed statins quite a lot this week. Statins didn't actually hit the market until 1987. So it's a fairly recent thing. So how did doctors deal with illnesses before before allopathic and the pharmaceuticals came in? Well, it was through homeopathy, osteopathy, natural remedies through herbs, and opiates were often used. So how did we lose sight of that? How did allopathic medicine completely take over the marketplace, if you like, of the medical industry? Right, I can feel a cough coming on, so I'm just going to mute myself. I'm back. Right, so what we're going to do now is look at how allopathic medicine stole the limelight, stole the entire mainstream medical industry. And to understand that, we have to understand the man who is John Davidson Rockefeller. Now, Rockefeller is the name which you associate with wealth. I ain't no Rockefeller means I'm not wealthy. It's along with the Rothschilds and other names like that. They are the definition of super wealth in the world. So let's have a look at John Davidson Rockefeller, shall we?
Okay.
But right, I need to credit my source here, because I found an excellent source on YouTube. The source is a chap called Colin D. Heaton, Heaton. He is a professor of history, and he is a veteran, so he says, of both the Army and the United States Marine Corps. So he obviously was, as you know, I'm a veteran, so I have a natural affinity with veterans, so I was quite impressed with that. His channel is called Forgotten History. The YouTube which I watched, he put out 8 months ago, and it has had 251k views, which is good because it means that the word is getting out there. The title of the video is Dark Origins of Big Pharma. I'll say that again. Dark Origins of Big Pharma, colon, John D. Rockefeller's Empire. Okay, so it's a book about basically how Big Pharma was launched and John D. Rockefeller's role in it. Okay, so John Davison Rockefeller was born on the 8th of July of 1839, and he entered business at the age of 20. He was straight away a very successful businessman. His father actually was a con man who was very good with money. So he had some good, not good lessons, but he had somebody to learn from. And in fact, his father launched him with a loan at which he charged his own son 10% interest. So it was John D. Rockefeller got a lesson in money very, very early from his own father. Now, he entered business at the age of 20, and it was during the period of the Civil War, your Civil War over in America in the 1860s, I believe. So he was born obviously around 1840. So he would have joined the industry. He would have gone into business at about 1860, and he was on the Union side during the war, but he didn't serve. He had a business which supplied the Union with its necessary equipment and food, that sort of thing. And typically, as us soldiers, I include myself in that, we're out on the front fighting and dying. So those people who are in business were making an awful lot of money through weaponry, through food, through supply chain. Basically, it's been the same in every war ever since. It's the blue collar workers out on the front line who suffer, and the capitalists at the back. They're doing their bit for the war effort, of course, but they're also making a very good profit alongside it. So he was one of those guys. He was a profiteer during the Civil War. But of course, the Civil War came to an end, didn't it? So that was his source of income pretty much curtailed. But he didn't stop there, because he then realized that oil was the future over in the United States and in the refining of oil specifically, because there's an awful lot of people out there trying to make oil wells. But he realized that if he could actually corner the market in refining oil, then that would be a better approach than trying to find oil himself. So in January of 1870, he founded Standard Oil, the Standard Oil Company, which we still see the remnants of today in the company Esso, for example, which Esso is ESSO, but it is in fact SO, Standard Oil. That's where it comes from. I think it was actually when he fell foul of the Monopolies Commission, or whatever you have over in the States, in the early 20th century. It was split down into 34 different entities, but that didn't stop him having a hand in all of them, and his wealth went beyond belief. So that's the history of Esso and Standard Oil. So he managed the Esso company until Standard Oil until 1897. By 1900, the turn of the last century, he controlled about 90% of petroleum production in the USA, and his teams created the first plastics and gasoline for internal combustion engines. So the plastics is quite interesting, because obviously most pills are now capsules contained within synthetic coatings. So that was a forerunner, if you like, of his role in the pharmaceutical industry. And his gasoline for the... Go on, Nikki.
Does that mean there's a little bit of plastic in those?
I'm not sure. Well, they're synthetic, aren't they? I don't know whether plastic is the right word. I don't know enough about it, but they are certainly... The word synthetic pharmaceuticals certainly appears quite a lot. So it's no great leap of faith to see that from plastic to synthetics is a natural progression. I'm not going to say we're eating plastic, because I don't know, but it's possible. But it is. But all the pills that you take, they have a synthetic coating to stop them from losing their shelf life. So yeah, it's synthetics rather than plastics we'll use, I think. But the gasoline for the internal combustion engine brought him into contact with Henry Ford of the car makers, and also Andrew Carnegie, who was the steel magnate in America at the time. They came together as business partners, so that was an incredibly powerful triumvirate. of Rockefeller, Ford, and Carnegie. And Rockefeller used his money and political influence to lay the groundwork for a complete takeover of the healthcare industry. So this is where Rockefeller comes in, how he basically was one of the fathers of allopathic medicine, in as much as that he paved the way for allopathic medicine to become the only acceptable medicine in the mainstream medical industry. So what he did, he had natural healing methods banned. Doctors were thrown into prison for practicing natural healing, and hospitals and clinics were threatened with closure if they did not follow the allopathic medicine message, the game plan of Rockefeller. So he was brutal. Basically, it's my way or the highway, or prison, basically, or closure. So, and he had what we call God money, which we will see in a minute. So nobody could stand up to him. He basically had Congress in his pocket because he funded the campaigns of the congressmen. Yeah, who are you going to call? Not Ghostbusters, John D. Rockefeller. So in 1901, he established the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. So this is when he officially gets involved with the medicine. And it's now known as the Rockefeller University. And it was dedicated to biomedical research, and was behind vaccines, synthetic drugs. I quote again, synthetic drugs. So this is where the plastics come in probably, and antibiotics. In other words, the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, so he was the founder, basically, of the pharmaceutical industry as we know it today. He spent $100 million of his own money, which I believe translates to 2.6 billion today, of his own money to buy off doctors and research scientists and to put them into place. So basically, he made sure that anybody who was either a pharmaceutical scientific researcher or a doctor was beholden to him, was on his payroll. So there was no challenge to him, basically, because if any doctors ever was seeing him, any doctor challenged him, they were history. And he banned traditional treatments in favor of the new way, the new allopathic way, synthetic drugs, etc., etc. And in 1902, he spent a further $1 million to form the General Education Board, which was passed by Congress on very carefully selected data. So he cherry-picked the data. And of course, he had Congress in his pocket because he owned most of the congressmen as well as the doctors. So they received no opposition to going through Congress. So from then on, medical academies could not receive federal funding or grants unless they abandoned the teaching of natural healing. So again, with Rockefeller, it was my way or the highway. So there was no actual teaching. There was no federal support for the teaching of natural healing. And in 1909, Rockefeller recruited the steel magnate, again, Andrew Carnegie, to conduct a national tour of clinics and hospitals to evaluate the current methods of treating illness and disease. I think Carnegie probably was far too important, far too busy to do it himself, so he did have to go and recruit somebody. If you want the figures of which hospitals passed, which failed, I think they visited about 165 and only 31 were deemed fit for purpose by their standards. But again, as I want to impress upon people, I'm here to give an overview. I'm here to point in the right direction. If this subject interests you, then I use Dr. Google and Professor YouTube as my sources. All you need to do is type in Rockefeller pharmaceutical and the pharmaceutical industry, and you'll get all this information for yourself. So you can actually do a much deeper dive for yourself if it captures your imagination. So anyway, Carnegie subbed it out to another person, and that person was a guy called Abraham Flexner, who was a former school teacher who was then the owner of a profit-making academy. And he came up with the Flexner Report of 1910. And after he'd gone around and visited the 165, whatever it was, institutions, the Flexner Report called for a centralized healthcare system, so a unified healthcare system, which created the age of big pharmaceutical companies. So it was the Flexner Report of 1910, which was funded by Rockefeller, which led to the establishment of the big pharma. Up until then, doctors had largely practiced natural holistic medicine, and which was, of course, nowhere near as profitable as the synthetic pharmaceuticals, because it was mainly plant-based and you could harvest that from the wild. You didn't have to make it in laboratories. So Rockefeller wanted to corner the global pharmaceutical market. He started a war on natural remedies in favor of synthetic pharmaceuticals. One of the claims was that pharma eradicated hookworm in the USA. He is credited with that. My source says that was a lie, but I cannot corroborate that claim that it was a lie. So if anybody wants to go and investigate the eradication of hookworm in the USA, I'd be very interested to hear what you find. Rockefeller spent $180 million in 1910, whatever it was. It's just like, it's unbelievable. So he spent 180 million to staff medical schools with his people. So his bought and paid for people. Rockefeller's non-profit organization, and he started a non-profit organization that donated big money to Flexners from the Flexner Report, the approved medical schools. Rockefeller started producing his own petroleum-based medicines, again synthetics. Natural remedies became alternative medicine. Remember, we spoke about alternative medicine, so they were sidelined effectively, natural remedies, because they didn't fit under allopathic medicine, which had then become the only mainstream medicine allowed. So they got the controversial name alternative medicines, which we've already discussed. Right, this is a clever move. He recruited the insurance companies. I know you guys over there in Canada and the USA, you rely on insurance for your medical treatment. We have national insurance over here. We pay through our taxes for a service we don't receive, which I won't go into now, but I'm on a very long waiting list to have a hernia operation, whereas our great friend, rocking coach Amy, had to wait 2 weeks for hers after diagnosis through the insurance you have over there. So that is a classic contrast. I think you guys are under the misapprehension that we have our national health service for free. We don't. We pay through our life, through our national insurance contributions. So yeah, we are insured, but only through taxes. Right. Anyway, so that's just a quick lesson about the national insurance and the National Health Service. Right. So he recruited the insurance companies to ban payments for natural remedies. So anybody who wanted treatment through the old-fashioned way could not claim on their insurance. So basically, it put natural remedies out of reach of your average Joe Public, your average blue-collar worker, or even your average middle-class worker. So that was a very clever way of making sure that natural remedies weren't actually on the market anymore. And also mainstream media. He took control of the mainstream media via Joseph Pulitzer, a name I've heard through the Pulitzer Prize, which happens every year. And there was also a guy called William Randolph Hearst, who I'm not so familiar with, but I'm sure some of our viewers will be familiar with William Randolph Hearst as well. So basically, he then owned mainstream media. He owned the pharmaceutical companies, he owned the insurance companies, and he owned the medical establishment. It was a monopoly, basically, and we are still reaping the benefits of that today. Mm-hmm. He took over the American Medical Association to eliminate natural healing from the curriculum. So the curriculum that can be taught in medical academies now, there's no teaching of natural remedies, which include things like the carnivore diet, for example. Any doctors who challenged this were struck off. They were basically they lost their license
that
revoked.
Still happens.
Sean Baker, classic case, absolutely. Yeah, and also Professor Tim Noakes over in South Africa as well, same thing. So he took over the American Medical Association, but at that time, the synthetic drugs through petroleum. Right, I'm going to have to go and let Angus out, so I'll be back in about 5 seconds, Nikki. So just smiling. Pretty, he's scratching at the door now.
Okay. Thank you so much for listening. A little break, maybe grab a glass of water, take a tea break, come back. Okay.
So that is Angus the cat safely out the door. Rick Charger Mopar has Milton. I have Angus, and they're great fun. Right, yeah. Where were we? So he took over the American Medical Association to make sure, but I say the petroleum-based drugs that he was using are carcinogenic. So what happened is that cancer started emerging into the human chronic disease, but of course he didn't want that to be out, did he? So how did he do it? What you do is you found the American Cancer Society. So the American Cancer Society are the experts on cancer, owned by Rockefeller. So he paid them to basically support him and make sure that it did not become public knowledge that his drugs were under suspicion for cancer, shall we say. And yeah, so it was, he founded the American Cancer Society to silence any links between his pharmaceuticals and cancer. We're coming to the end of this section now, but Rockefeller and JP Morgan colluded to create the Federal Reserve, which is something I've heard of in the States and probably different for you in Canada as well. And it was under Woodrow Wilson in 1913. I'm not a financial expert. It's not something I understand, but I can get this. And it was all about tax avoidance on the bribes for Congress. So basically, they could launder the money that they were bribing the congressman with through the Federal Reserve. Apparently, I'm sure a lot of people out there know a lot more about this than me, so I'm not just going to touch on it. Right, just interesting personal note about the Flexner Report, Rockefeller and Carnegie, is that they were social Darwinists. They just like our friend John Kellogg, they were actually racist and probably misogynist as well, because the Flexner Report basically sidelined people of color within the medical industry, that they should be much reduced in the given medical education, and that people of color should only be trained as doctors and nurses to treat fellow people of color. So there was a lot of racism there. There was also misogyny. Basically, women should not be trained as doctors. Nursing role, great, but it was made very difficult for women to actually train as doctors right up until about 1970, I think, from what I understand. But again, go and do the research for yourself. So he was an overt racist. By the time the Second World War came around, he was gone. However, his son and his heir and the Rockefeller organization rode in 1939 with a German pharmaceutical company. And of course, we know what happened in 1939 for the next 6 years. And apparently they were very much linked to this company, which was, I think it was Farban, IG Farban or something. And it was used by the Schutzstaffel, the SS, to actually use their products to carry out the mass murder in places like Auschwitz. And it was partly funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. It's public knowledge, but I won't go too deep into it. So it's obviously far too controversial, but it is out there in public knowledge. And again, you'll find it on this the video which I got it from. But it doesn't quite kind of fit into what we're talking about here. But it's something I think people want to be aware of. And also that video finishes with where they are today through JP Morgan Chase. Rockefeller owns about half of that, or the Rockefeller Foundation owns about half of that. So the Rockefeller Foundation basically is responsible, or Rockefeller's money is responsible for about 50% of the pharmaceuticals in the world at the moment. So that concludes, with 2 minutes to go. How's that for timing? That's accidental. So that concludes my little lecture for tonight about how John D. Rockefeller ruthlessly got rid of any other alternative medicine like osteopathy and homeopathy and natural remedies in favor of synthetic pharmaceuticals and allopathic medicine. So we've done the hour, which is nice. So any questions, Nikki, or anything you want to finish before we call it a day?
I just want to say thank you very much for the very informative history lesson. It's very important knowledge that needs to be passed down, in my opinion, to generations. In order for us
absolutely.
We're going, we have to know where we were. We don't have to dwell in the past. I'd much rather focus on solutions, right?
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah. And just a quick, a quick shout out to Lynn Tucker Carnivore, my great friend from South Carolina. She's great friends with people like Kerry Mann. She's quietly working away in the background, planting the seeds, along with her husband, Jim Tucker, Ribeye Ranger. It was actually Lynn who, I think on one of my Facebook posts, stressed the importance of the J.D. Rockefeller role in stealing the medical industry. So, a quick credit to Lynn for giving me that push to go and study J.D. Rockefeller.
Okay.
So yeah, that's and that concludes my bit of the entertainment for this evening. I've got no doubt that we will all go and jump on with Juliet and Doug later on tonight, and then I think rocking coach Amy, who I mentioned earlier as being a fellow hernia sufferer. I think she's doing her post surgery report immediately after Juliet and Doug. So that's why I will be going. I've got a 2-hour break now, which I probably need because I've been very busy for the last 8 hours actually researching and doing 2 lives now. So I'm going to go and give myself a bit of a 2-hour break, and I'm going to jump on with Juliet and Doug. Juliet, that is Coach Juliet Edens on YouTube, and Rocking Coach Amy, or Keto Stars is the other name of the channel, an hour after that. So yeah, if we've got any viewers, but if anybody sees this in the meantime, then please go on and jump on with them. Right, okay, so over to you, host, to wrap it up.
Billions of people are watching.
we think we know where they all are, but I'm sure the people our faithful followers will watch it back anyway.
Yes. So remember, next week we begin our next series of the Let's Eat Challenge, where we'll be people will be coming on stage. They'll be donating to Carrie Mann, Healing Humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Did we say who we got on for next week?
It'll be Stephanie Taylor.
Yeah, which is why I introduced that idea. She will be in Cyprus, in the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, which is going to be very interesting because Cyprus is the home of halloumi. So hopefully she will be demonstrating either the grilling or the frying of that goat's cheese, which you can't eat raw. You actually do have to cook it. And they have a great source of they have the most amazing pork chops. I lived there for 5 years. They have the most amazing pork chops and the most amazing steaks over there. They're big on their eggs and their fish. Swordfish is a speciality over there. So I'm really, really looking forward. As you know, Stephanie is a very good friend of mine, but she'll be cooking from Cyprus, which is where I lived for 5 years. So I've got a double reason. Well, I've got every reason to be here and cheering Stephanie on next week. So very much looking forward to that, and hopefully it will set the tone for what it will be an interesting series with people coming on and demonstrating their cooking. I would do so myself, but chucking a raw steak on a plate in the morning, covering it with butter and salt, and putting a couple of fried eggs on is not exactly complicated cooking, really, is it? So I'm probably not your man. We might be able to get Lainey to do something. I don't know.
It's still fun, right? It's like there's so much conversation that comes through, right? And it's a bonding experience too.
Yeah, true. But you've also got to have the technical ability to film yourself in the kitchen, which I haven't. So I think we'll leave it to the experts. And I know that Stephanie, I've actually seen. I went out for dinner with Stephanie on September the 20th, and I seen her in action with her things, a GoPro or whatever they call it. So I know that she will be able to do the filming. So she's the right person to ask.
Okay. Until next time, thank you for watching Club Carnivore.
Right, I'll stay on for the after show party when we break out the pizza and the beer, and we'll see you. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.